Hello, and welcome to the Brubacher Excavating Podcast, where we're shaping the world we live in so more people can find the construction industry uncommonly refreshing.
Welcome back to part 2 of recruiting and hiring in construction. In today's episode, we'll resume our discussion about challenges faced, stories and tips for the hiring process, and incorporating company principles. I'm your host, Macy Landis, and with us today we have Sean Cotter from Warfel Construction, Gina Breslin from North Group Consultants, as well as Allan and Torey Shotzberger from Brubacher.
So I have a little fact here. According to Liz Sheffield with ADP, it was reported that roughly 41% of the current construction workforce is going to retire by the year of 2031. So that's 8 years away, almost 7 years away, which is crazy to think about. How do you think that this is going to affect our industry?
I think it's affecting our industry right now. I mean, we are seeing our senior superintendents, our most qualified people, getting closer and closer to retirement. And, I think we talk about it, I think later on, but mentorship and, how do you bring people up? But I think our industry is facing a existential crisis with, people who are looking at the trades and saying, hey, I went to college or I did this, and so I'm not necessarily going to go into the construction industry, which I obviously think is a mistake. But I think as a industry, we have got to make construction appealing again. It was for years and years and years and years was the backbone of our country. And we got away from that. We praised things that were more cerebral, maybe from a standpoint of, I'll take myself, for example, because that's easiest. I have a degree in psychology, which, unless you're going to be a doctor and get your doctorate, is about the most worthless piece of paper I have in my office. So it helps me in dealing with people. But, I learned pretty quickly that, like, hey, I went to college, I got a degree in psychology, and my passion was always for building buildings. And I think Gina hit it best is I wanted to walk around and I was always proud of looking at a building that I had something to do with. And I think people need to understand how cool it is to be able to build something and see that and have it last generations. Where a lot of this other stuff, I don't think, you see a rise of depression and things like that, because I think people have a lack of, I did that, or I have that, or I can show my kids. It's so cool for me to drive around Lancaster City or somewhere else and say, hey, Daddy was a part of that. Like, 101 North Queen, which is, if you've been down in Lancaster City, is an awesome building that I can show my kids for generations that we did. So I think people need to understand, but it's tough right now. There's not an influx, and we are fighting each other to get all the talent that does want to go into the industry because there is so few of it.
Yeah, the people that you're looking for to fill your key positions already have, they're working somewhere else. And so, that statistic is staggering. And so the fact that we're talking about it's great. We're trying to get in front of it, but yeah.
I would echo what Sean said, that in that we're already feeling the effects of this. And the challenge, or one of the challenges, is that you can only train someone so quickly. You can only get experiences so much, so many experiences in a given year, whatever it may be. And so something that we have to be intentional about is training, and whether that's in a formal or informal setting, that maybe you're investing in someone and they don't even realize it, or getting them exposure to something that you yourself might not. Maybe they're a first-year employee and it's something that you wouldn't have opportunity to experience 5 years into your career. And so trying to expedite their training and development as quickly as you can, I think, is important. And just trying to raise up that next generation of, whether it's an experienced operator or whether that's a superintendent or all the way up into the office and a project management, estimating, whatever other role it may be. But it is definitely something that we're going to struggle with for the foreseeable future.
One thing you said is, bringing somebody along or training them quickly. One of the things I've personally been trying to do too, is set realistic expectations early on with our new candidates. There is this sense in the market, because any skill set is so highly sought after, that there's this false sense of, well, I must be very good at what I do. I could be the president of the company in a year and a half so setting expectation, giving them a taste of what it really is like as early as possible, because I think a lot of times you're so scared to lose somebody that you just say yes. And I think one of the most powerful words in the English language is no. Like, you're not ready. And it's like almost like a parent situation where you're just like, hey, I've been where you are. You're going too fast. You're going to cause a big problem. It's going to be detrimental to your career. Just slow down. But if you don't tell them that because you're scared of losing them, and you may lose some, but I think when you're talking about training people up, is having that realistic, hey, there's only one president of the company. We're not all going to be there. This is how fast it typically takes. This is what it's going to look like. Like, this is how it is. We're going to set goals, but you're not just going to come in and say, hey, someone else said I was this because I have 4 months of experience, and we're going to be able to give that to you. So I think if you've had that conversation early, then you can help set the expectation. And when it happens, you can show them, I told you you're going to trip and fall here, but we got you because you're not too far out yet that it's too big of a deal. But I think from the training standpoint, to help fill that, because I think the people we're losing had that experience. And if you talk to them, they didn't make it super, super quick. It took time for them to gain experience within not just the industry, but your company and how you work. So they know what it's like. And there's, when you talk about losing those people, it's because they have years of pain points and years of oopses and years of screws up, and they know how to fix it quickly. It's not as stressful for them because they've done it before.
I think it's important as a company too, which I'm sure with Warfel and with Brubacher, when I talk to people who are new to the industry, they tell me, well, I don't have this kind of experience. And I say, it's okay. Like, we will, like what we mentioned earlier, we will train you, depending on, their character and whatnot. And I think it's important with the younger generation coming in, being willing to train them, being willing to put them to where they need to be because we see something in them. Yeah, I think it's important to do that.
Right, and not just toss them out in the ring, but to give them all the resources that they need, whether it's in the field, in the office, wherever they are, give them those resources to be able to grow into that, whatever we want them to be or whatever they want to be.
Yeah, the past, again, like I mentioned, I'm pretty new to the role as a recruiter, but the events that I've gone to at schools, it's been kind of echoing in my ear about how, it's a just challenge to find young people who want to come into the trades, like you mentioned, Sean. And it's exciting to, like, we partner with Lancaster Career and Technology Center, which I believe you guys do too. Well. Yeah. And from what I understand, next year's class, they're going to have a very large amount of kids coming in to the heavy equipment program. And that was very exciting to me because I mean, when I was in school, it was discouraged to go to like tech schools. And now it's a wonderful opportunity to quick get out there and go get a career.
Because all of us with psychology degrees figured out that it was going to work.
I would add, when you think about this idea of training or developing people, I mean, people want to be valued, people want to be known, and people want to have that sense that you're helping them grow. And so I think when you're having regular conversations with your people, when they know that you are investing in them, when they know that you know them, care about them, like that's the game changer. And so, I think a question we can all ask ourselves, because I know it's even something that I could do better, but just how are we investing in our people in an intentional way, but also making sure that we know them, what's important to them,
I think it's such a great point. I say a lot, and I think Joe Rogan says it, but the worst thing that ever happened to an individual is the worst thing that ever happened to him. And what he means is, it's very easy for me to look at young people coming in, and I served in the Marine Corps and did things and served some tours and say, well, they have no idea what a hard day is really like. Well, they don't. They were never where I was. They were never. So if the worst thing that ever happened to them was losing a video game tournament or something, well, we laugh and we look at it and I say, but that to them is their stress point. And, if you're going to invest in the people, you have to invest in the people and not hold judgment, because we can all look at it and say, back in the day, uphill, in the snow, both ways, like every generation does this. Everybody does it. And we have to look at the generation and say, this is the group that's going to take us to the next level. And we can judge them, or we can work with them and understand that and hold them accountable for the things we need to do to get our job done. But I think so often we throw them out and just say, this is a generation that's blank. And I can be caught up in that really quick, but just understanding that it's, as a mentor or as a leader or whatever it is, it's our job to understand who they are now. And it's our job to help them get to where they need to be in order for us to be a successful organization.
That's an awesome point. I think what you said about Joe Rogan's quote, that's a really good way to look at it. And yet to not judge somebody and to understand that
it's hard.
Yeah.
I promise. I sit sometimes and I'm like, interesting. Yep, I have to process and be like, don't say anything about the Marines. Don't say anything about the Marines.
Really good way to look at it, though, and that's very important when bringing people in, especially the new generation. It's a different world we live in today, for sure.
Gina, you mentioned about like wanting to be valued, and I think like what you mentioned, Macy, like the younger generation wants to be valued. They don't really care necessarily about like maybe money like it was in the past. Being valued, being taken care of, being looked at as a person and not just another pawn in the scheme. And I think Brubacher and Warfel has done a great job with making their employees be cared for and looked at as people and not just a number.
Yeah, no one wants to feel anonymous, right? No one wants to feel like they're just here putting in the hours. They want to know how to be successful in the role. They want to understand that what they're doing matters and it makes a difference. And sometimes when you think about all the little things that people do, it is hard to maybe quantify that, but it doesn't take long. And that's it's a differentiator, I think, in excavating and construction. You can go see, this is what we accomplished today. It's right there in front of you, that's just so cool.
And I think it's being honest with them too, because I think workers now, they are very confused. They came out of COVID, they all got to stay home and, work from there, except for the field, which we deal with that a lot, that the field did not get to do any of that. And so there was some anxiety and some resentment that built up that. But as we're talking to some of these people who come back, they felt like, hey, that was great. I want to keep doing that. But I also want the camaraderie. So you have to walk them through the fact that those are completely different from each other. And you don't get your cake and eat it too. Like you don't get camaraderie if you're not in the office. And it doesn't mean you can't be flexible and things have changed from that aspect, but it's helping people walk through the confusion of the last, especially couple of years, because they got in a routine. They understood what it looked like to work from home. And there was advantages for that, for them, their family. But then they also don't know the people they work with, and there's not a team environment, and they don't, I say it all the time in pre-con, like, getting a group that knows, hey, I'm going to pick up the stone and it's going to be it's going to be with the site work contractor, not with the concreter. That's the art that we talked about. And, you need to walk them through that. You don't get that and this. So you can't have it both ways. Like working from home and then one happy hour is not going to build a team.
Yeah. Right.
So I know that's what you think it would be, but that's not actually going to build a team.
I think everybody, no matter the position, also has to, as an individual, pick and choose, not to say pick and choose, but you got to pick what is priority to you and what you value the most, again, as an individual. And that kind of helps you see where you want to go, who you want to be working with. And it's different for everybody what that is that motivates you to be doing that work every day. Going off of that, how can the industry work to prepare for this? I know we mentioned, some training and mentorship. Another one, succession planning, leadership development. They're all really good things that are going to help us to combat this statistic of a lot of people are going to be retiring in 7-8 years. Do you guys have any other specifics maybe that others could learn from as to training, mentorship, succession planning? I feel like we touched on a lot of them pretty good.
Yeah, I think it really comes down to training and development at all levels of the organization, whether it's from the entry level labor, and I would go so far to say is even the president of the organization. You want to be lifelong learners, and it needs to be just ingrained in how you do business and as part of your culture. It's just that it comes second nature to just constantly invest in yourself and in others.
Yeah, I think hands-on training is incredibly important too. I think, as I look at it and I'm training or mentoring someone, I want them to understand that I know what I'm doing. Like, I'm telling you to do something, and just know that if I have to sit in that same seat, I can still do that. So I think it's important for trainers or mentors to make sure that people understand that whatever you're saying, I think the book, Why, make sure they understand the compelling why. Why are you? So it's not just telling people what to do. I think you learn a lot from understanding why you made that decision, because a lot of people are going to look, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Why would you do that? And then once you explain the whole situation and they understand that you're not just shooting from the hip. So as you're training, especially this younger generation, you're not creating a glass ceiling of saying like, hey, if you always come down and fix it, they're never going to learn. Let them stumble, let them fall, make sure your company doesn't go out of business. That's important. But let them stumble and fall a little bit and be there with, a donut to throw out into the water and let them grab onto it. But they need to figure out what it's like. Because if not, if you're always there hovering and protecting, then they're never going to grow and they're going to resent it. They're going to wake up one day and be like, I'm just doing the same and no one trusts me. Everyone's double checking everything I do. Like, what am I doing? You don't feel the value. You don't feel like people actually care about what you do.
Yeah, that's so true. We talked earlier about the importance of relationships. And I think I mentioned, the people that we're recruiting for, most of them, unless we're talking like the entry level positions, they're gainfully employed somewhere, right? And so how are we building relationships? How are we making sure that we create the environment, that we have the culture where people want to come? Mm-hmm. And how are we having those relationships so that first time that superintendent somewhere else has a really bad day, we're the phone call, right? When they say, I'm done with this organization, they're not aligned in their values, there's confusion, there's not clarity, how have we A, built that relationship, and B, how have we created that culture that's the place you want to go to work?
Well, I think that goes to your core values too, because when that person decides that they don't want to work somewhere, have you as an organization shown your core values throughout the community enough that the first person they think of is Warfel or Brubacher? Because they're going to call someone. So, if your organization through and through has shown that you hold steadfast to your core values, they're going to pick up the phone and call Warfel or Brubacher because if not, they're going to call someone else. Mm-hmm. If your competitor has done a better job and people out there, they're like, no matter what I've done with whoever organization, they always act like this. They're going to call that group. So that's why you have to live out your core values. That's why it can't be different for any more member of the organization, because it's so competitive and you need to be that first call. So have you lived that? Have all of your organization lived that? Because one person can ruin that. Mm-hmm. One person doing something that's wrong out there on a job, whatever, then everybody thinks about that. Whoever was involved in that scenario is going to think that's who you are.
Right. Yeah. I think it's also very important to think about it in the sense of we'll be their first call, not that we're going out and poaching.
Yep. That
we're just making it appealing so that, like you said, Gina, when they have that day, we're the ones that they call. Mm-hmm. I think that's really important. So another statistic that I found, sorry to bore you with the statistics, but I thought they were interesting and fitting into our conversation. According to Raymond Search Group, the top 5 recruitment challenges are as follows: finding qualified candidates, retaining employees, keeping up with technology, managing costs, and meeting safety standards. Would we agree with these being current obstacles in our industry?
Absolutely.
And what are some ways that companies can overcome these challenges?
I think the keeping up with technology is an interesting one. I think you need to be on the cutting edge, not the bleeding edge of technology. I think technology can be overwhelming. Yeah. And I think I actually see it the opposite, that if you adopt everything all at once and shove it down your employees' throats, and every day they're having to learn an entire new system that integrates differently, everybody's out there, especially in construction right now. It's kind of the last bastion for these big venture capitalists to go into. Like, it was such a misrepresented industry with such big numbers that technology companies are just getting into it. And we always have to say to it, Warfel, like, let's calm down. Like, there's a lot out there. Let's let people breathe and understand it, because I think keeping up with technology is great. Overwhelming people with technology can be exactly what it's overwhelming to just say, hey, every day I've got to learn something new. And so it's got to add value to what you're doing, or people are just going to be like, this is one more thing I got to learn. And each one's a little bit different and interacts a little bit different. And so you've got to be really careful that you are on the cutting edge, because if not, you'll fall behind. But you can't overwhelm people with it.
Definitely can be overwhelming. I mean, we live in a very technological world, and there's so many different things to learn. And it's been going on for a while, but still it's overwhelming.
Well, we found too in some of our buildings, we have all this great technology and we have iPads and we have all these stations, except when you go into the depths of the renovation in the center of it, there's no Wi-Fi.
Right.
And you've demoed everything, so nothing works. So
Right.
it's now saying, oh, now we got to figure that. So it's constantly evolving. You're constantly having to figure out, because if you're expecting people to use the tools you put in there, they better be able to use the tools that you've given them, because things are set up around that. So it's making sure there's a plan.
Yeah. Macy, I think the first two on the list, finding qualified candidates and retaining employees, clearly they go hand in hand. And we talked a lot today about finding qualified candidates. The fact that the folks we're looking for likely have jobs. So how can we get creative? How can we think outside the box, find a bartender, or, whatever that example is, or promote someone within, or take somebody who's maybe not doing well in one area and move them to another area because we think the who they are fits. But when I look at the retaining employees, I think that's huge. I think what's the saying, something about, I should know this because I kind of like football, but defense is the best offense, or do I have that right? Yeah. Let's keep our people, right? Our really good people. Let's invest in them. Let's grow them. Let's develop them. Let's create, again, that place where people want to come. So I can get pretty excited about the idea of let's make sure we're retaining our employees. Mm-hmm. And I think that ties right back to organizational health and making sure you have a highly cohesive leadership team, mm-hmm. that we trust each other, that we can have healthy conflict so that we can commit to our decisions and that we can hold each other accountable. Mm-hmm. That model is just so important. And the idea of defense, being our...
Another statistic for you is in retaining employees is, I read recently that the next generation will switch jobs 10 to 14 times by the end of their career. Where baby boomers were somewhere around 2, and it kind of slowly went up, and they're anticipating it to be 10 to 14 times, which is terrifying when you think about retaining employees, that they're going to switch. So some of the things that we're looking at is let them switch careers, but let them do it within your organization. Let them have new responsibilities. Let them find that same need to, we as a culture are so every 5 seconds need to be stimulated. And it's the same thing with the job. You need something new. We just don't have the same patience we did. And not wishing it was the way it was before is not a strategy. Okay. So, we've tried to look at it and say, hey, let's, scratch that itch within the company and figure out, again, from the Marine Corps, there's, your sergeant may be your rank, but your billet may be something completely different. And I've looked at that in pre-con as saying, hey, let's have someone be solely, their job's an estimator, but let them work on commodities where they can really sink their teeth into something new and understand how the market is doing, or let them understand, how escalation is going, or give them something else, or just be an MEP expert or constructability and really let them figure out new jobs. Because if not, they're going to go find something else. Mm-hmm. And if you're just wishing it was the way it was before and they're going to be lifelong, it's not the way things are right now. And you'll find those, but as a whole, it's tough right now.
I think too, it goes back to how close are you staying to your employees? Mm-hmm. How well do you know them? Are they comfortable saying, this is getting kind of boring right now, I'm looking for something else? Like, that's what you want. You want to build that type of relationship that they can be super candid with you, that you're approachable, that you're available, that you have regular conversations. That's how you get in front of that.
I think one-on-ones is really important. Having true scheduled one-on-ones, or even if they walk in and say, I have nothing else to tell you, it'd be like, fine. But some people will find it's difficult to schedule a time. So each of your employees needs to have a scheduled one-on-one where they can sit down and you can look them and say, go through all their goals and everything, but then have at least, I take at least half the time to say, like, let's just talk. Like, how are you doing? How's the family? How's your experience here? Like, just free for, because that's when it'll come out that like, I'm getting a little bored. Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Mm-hmm. Well, what do you want to do? I don't know. Okay, now let's work on that.
Right.
Because I can't read minds. So
important.
I think that is so important to be able to retain your employees. Is like everybody had said, such great points. To be able to have that relationship and let your employees come to you and say, I'm getting bored, or I want something different, whatever it is. And it's so easy to sit here and judge and to say, well, why do people want to change jobs so often? Like, why are the newer generation like this? It never used to be like that. And rather than judging, to be able to sit there and say, well, we're going to do something about this, and we're going to do what we can to keep you here, to keep you happy, to keep you motivated.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to managing costs too.
Yeah.
You as a leader, you as a manager better know what your people are worth in the open market, because they will.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you get ahead of that and say like, hey, we're going to get you here, but here's the things they're not. Recruiters are calling all the time, no offense. But you better know and have had that conversation where they feel like there's a path, there's a way. And, someone comes to them and says, hey, we can do this. You've had the conversation, you've shown them the detail, you know what they're worth in the open market, because like I said, they're going to know it. And if you can get out in front of it, there's a level of trust there where you're talking through that and having goals set for them to get to the place that they want to be, but they understand too. Like, we pay you every dollar that, I say Warfel pays you, I'll make sure I get. Like this is a business, and if we're going to give you more money, I need to make sure that there's value to that. And it can't just be, you heard this in the open market or anything, but if you don't get out in front of that, then you feel like, now you're reacting to it rather than having a conversation leading up to it.
Yeah, I completely agree. Recruiters are calling. Yeah. And again, so make sure that we understand the salary component, but we all know the saying that people leave managers, right? More than, and salary is important, but so is vacation and time off. And so how can we be flexible? Just, again, it's those one-on-one conversations that we can understand what's important to our people.
Yeah.
As individuals.
Yeah. Light bulb go off, and it's probably going to sound so silly because it's so obvious, but your statistic about, it used to just be 2 or 3 times people might change their jobs, and now it's 10 to 14. Social media has such a big impact on that. Everybody is advertising and putting out these promotional videos and recruiting on many different platforms, and everybody's on them. Everybody sees it. LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, so many more, I'm sure. It's crazy to think about that has such a huge role, because you can scroll on your phone and just randomly, without even looking for it, see something pop up that, hey, maybe would this be a better fit for me? And
that's a good
and you can apply with one click.
Yeah.
You can, or none, just a phone call. Someone says, I got 4 jobs for you right now. Like and their job is to make people feel good and, make them feel like, hey, there's a lot of people out there that want you and want your skills, even though they don't know them very well. But, it's your job as a manager to make sure that you are paying people fair, the benefits are there, and also the value. And like, if you don't know what they want, someone else is going to fill that in. So if you haven't taken the time to understand them as a person and know what their priorities are, then someone else is going to figure it out, and they're going to go there. So again, it's to what Gina said is, you have to spend the time with the individual. And that can't just be something you say like you can't just have your one-on-one and go down your sheet and check boxes. Like they have to feel just like I want to feel. You got to put yourself in their position. Like I want to be treated like a person. I want people to know who my family is and what's important to me. And if you as a manager get so caught up in the day-to-day that you forget about the people who are making day-to-day happen, then you will have people who lead managers.
Yeah.
To have a boss that you feel like you can be comfortable walking into their office and say whatever you need to. Maybe you're anxious sometimes, but you know that you can go in there and be honest and be vulnerable, and it's going to be an honest conversation. Maybe they're going to say no, but you feel comfortable to do that, and it's going to be a conversation, not just a no explanation. That's really important.
Or if you tell them all the time you care about them as a person, and as soon as something tough comes up, you care about everything other than them as a person. It's not going to go well. So
it's not going to last.
You got to be genuine in the tough conversations as well as the fun conversation. Everything. I think people lose sight that being genuine is a really valuable skill that a lot of people lose. That they try to be something and they try to, and that's not their personality. So you need to be genuine to who you are, because then you'll have a team who enjoys who you are. There's people out there who don't like me, I'm sure. And it's okay. Like, hey, personalities don't always mesh. And so you want a group that enjoys you as a person. And just like I enjoy them. It's part of why I said going back to the right candidate is there's not a right candidate. There's a right candidate for the situation in your department and things like that. And if you create that, people really get along well because they truly enjoy being around each other.
Yeah. I think low-hanging fruit, or something that's easy and yet so often gets missed. And I recently saw the quote, and I'm not going to get it quite right, but it's something like, unexpressed gratitude is experienced as ingratitude. I think I had that right. It's Andy Stanley.
Mm.
But I really like that, because I think so often, and especially these two industries, it's go, go, go every day, all day. And we forget to express sincere appreciation, to let people know when we've noticed that specific, for appreciation to really mean something, it needs to be specific.
Yeah.
And so when we do that, it's a game changer. So if I would want our listeners to take away something, that's a piece of it. Like, how are you making sure your people know they're appreciated and that you're noticing in very specific ways? I often tell the story of a CEO of a pretty large organization here locally who had great intentions to go around every Tuesday at 9:00 and just tell his people, thank you. That's great. It's better than nothing. But after a while, it was like, 9:00, here he comes.
Right.
So the genuine and specific part is pretty important if you want to do that really, really well.
And it can be something small. You have no idea how even the tiniest comment could change somebody's day or make
Right.
them feel like they're valued.
Yeah.
Well, if you gotta have the pulse of the individual too. You
Yeah.
know, I walked in the other day and saw somebody who was obviously just done. Like, still had a few more hours in the day, and they were just done. And I just said, "Hey, go home." And they're like,
Yeah.
well, I'm like, "Go home. I promise, whatever you're going to do, whatever's on your mind, you can tell me, you cannot. Just go home, because whatever you're going to do is going to be a mistake." And I said, and I know it because I did it. And I sat in your chair, and the biggest mistakes I ever made was when I looked just like you did right now. And that's genuine. Like, I know you. I know when you're good. I know when you're not.
How did that individual take that? Like, were they receptive to that? Because there's a piece of me, like, I would probably feel a little reprimanded. Like, I failed. He sent me home.
But
This
if
is
you
not
have a
good.
genuine appreciation for each other,
Yeah.
and it's not in a way that I'm like, I just know. I'm
Yeah.
like, hey,
You're like, I got your back.
Your mind's somewhere else. What do you have to do?
Right.
Like, go home. Like,
Yeah.
It's right before Thanksgiving.
Right.
Like,
It'll be here when
it'll
you come
be
back.
here when you
Yeah.
get back. I promise you,
Yeah.
we'll get our hours out.
Yeah.
Like, the one thing I know about, like we said about this industry, like,
Right.
you will get your 40 hours plus a week, and it doesn't need to be right now.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
go take care of that. If you want to come back in, I'll meet you here at 6 a.m. We'll get the 3 more hours in, and we'll
Right.
get it done. But it could be viewed as, I think, if you don't know each other.
Right. That's where I was headed. You built that foundation of trust with that person. That's why that works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why that relationship is so important, because I'm thinking of myself. If I were that employee in that situation, I would immediately have that thought of, oh my gosh, I did something wrong. Like, I'm being
Correct.
reprimanded. But knowing that I have the relationship with my boss that I do, I would sit there and I would say, oh my gosh, did I do something wrong? And they'd say, no, I just can tell, like, you need a minute. And then I'd be appreciative and say, wow, I really am valued. My emotions, my feelings are valued.
Right. Yeah.
Or I could say, come talk. Like, let's talk through what's going on, and maybe it's something, or maybe it's not. But one way or the other, like, hey, like, to the point of saying, hey, you're going to be in trouble. You're not in trouble. What I've always said is, you're going to be in trouble if you keep working and make a bigger mistake, because your head's somewhere else. And that's why I say some people cannot like me because of things like that. But at the end of the day, too, it's genuinely towards the person, but it's also genuinely for my company as well. Is that it's my job to manage risk. It's my job to manage how people manage that risk within our department. Because, like I said, we are not dealing with $10 here and $10 here. You miss a zero in an estimate, it's not $10.
Right.
It's a much bigger number.
Yeah.
So I want people that are 100% in and 100% on cue, because there's too much risk in what we do. So you have to build that trust, but you also have to be able to say those kind of things, because your job, and I know this, your job is to manage millions of dollars at a time. And that's nerve-wracking.
Yeah. I think in this industry also, that point of, to be able, and maybe not go home for the day, but just to walk away for a couple of minutes. And I think depending on the position, this industry is easily caught up in, well, no, I have things that I need to get done. I have things that need to be executed on a timeline. And yeah, that's important, but they are not going to be done correctly if you do not take a minute, if you are super stressed and whatever it is that you have to do, I have like multiple stress balls that sit at my desk, and I will take a minute and sit there and like get my mind right before I continue, because you're going to risk messing something up. And it's important to be able to do that, whether it's 1 minute, 2 minutes, 10 minutes, take a walk outside, get a breath of fresh air, whatever works for you. I just had that conversation in a team meeting not too long ago, just reminding that it's okay to take a break. Like, I know we've got a tight deadline, we got things going on, but take that 5 minutes, take a breath.
And you connect what you're saying with the industry we're in, right?
Mhm.
This is get it done, deadline, right? Very highly deadline driven. And so our greatest strength, people who come with can-do spirit, get it done spirit, can also be our greatest weakness when we don't know, or we don't have LaShawn, watching our back and saying you need to take that minute. So again, we need to know our people so we can see that, so we can catch up.
You also can't force people to do it your way.
Yeah,
that's a big mistake managers make is, well, I did it this way.
Therefore,
And so I always tell the story. We were in the military, and we had a new what's called butter bar. So they're brand new lieutenants that are just out of the military academy. And I was 5 years into my career, and he got up there and said, "Hey, you need to be at A, and we're at A. We need to be at B. And so you're going to go up here. You're going to take a left. You're going to do this. You're going to do that. And you're going to go all the way to B." And I was like, "Yes, sir." And I turned around as soon as he walked away and said, "We're not doing any of that. We're going to be exactly where he needs us to be, but we're going to do it this way." And you learn that as you evolve through leadership, is that he wasn't wrong at all, but just the way our unit had developed is we had a different way that we did it that was successful for them. So you have to put guardrails up. You can't have people going around doing whatever they want all the time. So I always say it's like a highway. Like, guardrails are there. You got 4 lanes. You can pick one of the lanes to go in that's better for you. Don't go off the edge because then we're in trouble.
Right.
But you need to let people figure out how to do it their way, because there's only one of you and there's only one of them. And they're going to do it a little bit different than you do it. And you got to let them do that.
Yeah, but when the guardrails are in place, when the core values are in place, when the culture's in place, that's when that works really, really well.
Yeah. And that goes back to that lifelong learning process that we were talking about. There's always going to be 1,000 different ways to do things, and that's okay. You'll figure out what works for you as an individual, or you as a team, you as a company. But yeah, letting people find their own way, and for others who know a different way to be adaptive to that and understand that the world is ever changing, and quickly too. So it's important to do that. My last little statistic from ABC, one of their chief economists, stated that the construction industry averaged more than 390,000 job openings per month in 2022, the highest level on record. What are some ideas to attract workers into our field of work? I know that we've talked about, getting that appeal and recruiting so that we are the first people to call, but like, how do we do that?
When I go to schools, and myself and Jordan Keller are talking to students, we often just remind these young folks that, you get to play in the dirt every day, and you get to build stuff, and like, you just get to be a kid kind of, and it's really appealing. And it's nice to see like the spark in, people's eyes when you're talking to them and telling them, like, this is what you could do. Like, you can work with your hands. Like, you don't have to necessarily, like, if you don't want to, of course, sit behind a desk, you can go play with big toys all day. Like, what's not to love about that? So just reminding people how the exciting parts of the job, and obviously being transparent about the bad parts, but really trying to wiggle your way in there and reflecting the good stuff about it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think painting a picture, and then also telling the stories. How can you tell the story of, what a day in the life, looks like? Mm-hmm. The other thing I think about too is what are the, transferable skills or the related industries that you can, tap. How can you think outside the box? Yeah, to try to attract folks. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that maybe you're a couple years out of school, are maybe not happy where they're at.
Yeah, I think Allan and I have a really difficult situation because we don't get to play and build, and and so you're attracting the same people who may be thinking about other careers and those type of things. So it's selling them first on that. And I always say, when you played with toys as a kid, were they construction workers or were they computer programmers? There's something about big pieces of machinery. There's something about what we do that's really cool. And then translating it into estimating and pre-con is just like, talking about the fact that we're the bank. Like, nobody gets a dollar that we don't put in there. So we need to understand the building as well as anybody else does, and just really painting the picture of why you got involved in it. And that's what I try to is like just answer the question as if I was talking to a younger version of myself. Like, what do I still love about what I do? I obviously love it, or I would have done something else. So what do I still love about it? And then really talking them through what I love about my job on a day-to-day basis.
It is interesting. I mean, I even reflect, my degree was in education, health and phys ed. And as a kid, I mean, who doesn't want to like play games all day? Phys ed. Went through college, got the degree, got a job at Ephrata Middle School actually for a couple of years, but I also had health. And I realized pretty quickly that I loved the classroom, and I would have never, and I think there's this whole, I don't want to sit behind a desk. You're not really sitting behind it, right? A desk. You're not just on a computer all day. So again, how do we paint the picture? How do we create that story of this is what it looks like, and here's the journey, and here's the path? Sean's story is such a fun one. I mean, he's a VP at a huge company right now because of it, right? Like Allan's got this huge important role, but he's like, we all started somewhere, and how do you tell that story?
Yeah, I think really it comes down to helping whether it's current or prospective employees, kids, whatever, understand the opportunity to be a part of something big and see the fruits of their labor. And maybe now on a day-by-day basis, but you look at, Sean talked about a job in downtown Lancaster, a job that took a year or more to build in some cases. And man, I was a part of this and just trying to tell that story.
And you guys both do that with current employees, right? Like you'll take them when you have a job that's closer to home, to the site, to see, hey, look, maybe you're in the office all day, but you helped build this, you helped create this that's just so cool.
Yeah, cool.
There are a lot of opportunities for the office personnel to get out and see the things that we're working on, and I think it plays a huge role in being motivated for that behind the scenes work. I think that we touched on so many different things today, and that was an absolutely awesome conversation. We talked about everything that I wanted to and had some really great advice that I hope that others listening can, get some insight on. Maybe they're struggling and they don't know how to reach out and ask for help, and maybe they can get some tidbits on what they can do to keep their employees retained. And maybe they didn't realize that with the, construction workforce is going to retire soon. I mean, I'm sure everybody's feeling it, not just us, but maybe there's somebody out there that's our goal for this, is just for someone out there to be able to take something from this and to learn, and as an industry, just to be able to grow. So thank you guys so much for joining us today. Like I said, I think that was an awesome conversation, and I cannot wait to get this out.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for listening to the Brubacher podcast today. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe to our podcast so you can listen to the new episodes each month. Share it with your friends in the industry and those who might like to learn more about the construction industry. Feel free to check out our website at www.brubacher.net. I'm Keith Brubacher, president of Brubacher Excavating Incorporated, and we hope you found our discussion insightful, and we look forward to the next time together.